Project management. Everybody needs it, many people hate it. Today, we are going to talk about the trials and tribulations of project management in the construction space. So, if you've ever had some challenges, continue watching because the show starts right now. Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Stack and Startup Baltimore. This is the podcast where we talk to business leaders within the Maryland area to find out just how business is done in Maryland. Every week we have a special guest, and this week we have Kathleen Sherrill. How are you doing?
Doing well, Jason. Thanks for asking.
Awesome, awesome. And Kathleen, tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and why you're here.
I've been practicing architecture for about 40 years. I've been in my own practice for a little over 21 years. Um, and why am I here is because I think project management is very important to the success of any design and construction project. It is very important to both sides of that, both the design piece where you have a team of designers and during the construction phase where you have a team of different contractors doing different phases of the work. And in both cases, if they're not organized, if the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I've personally found that within any business, communication, business lives and dies on communication. Just like any kind of relationship, if you're not in the same page with whoever you're working with, whoever you're partnered up with, that yeah, a project can absolutely have cost overruns, take much more time, just because somebody hasn't communicated properly, whether it is somebody is out of office and doesn't pass down correctly, if somebody is, sick. I mean, we all get sick. Sometimes, here in Maryland, we've had quite a few snowstorms in 2025, 2026. That's kept us away for a couple of days. So yeah, if you don't have that communication, then absolutely things can kind of fall through the cracks.
Seeing that be the downfall of what could have otherwise been a really good project. And that lack of communication, and we call it a three-legged stool between the owner, the design team, and the construction. And when those lines of communication fail, that's when you have your problems. People begin to take on roles they're not familiar with and shouldn't be in, only just to keep the project going. And because, again, the person who is supposed to be handling that role and should know what is coming next isn't communicating that with the team. And so therefore the team begins to make it up just to keep the project moving. And that's dangerous.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think some of that has to do with how some project managers are coming into the business. I've seen, and we see this in the IT world a lot, where you have people who come in with a stack of certifications, but haven't worked on a lot of projects, or in the IT world, haven't worked in the IT space for very long. They're just like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and get the certification and be done with it. Uh, I myself have taken a CompTIA project management certification exam, Project Plus. I didn't pass it, but I can definitely see where it would have been way too easy. Basically, I skimmed the reading material, and it was a beta exam. I didn't expect to get it. I just kind of wanted to take it to see if I could get it really quick. Didn't, and that's fine. But I can definitely see where if you're just getting those certifications, just trying to pad your resume, and because you don't have that experience, your cost to get in is a lot lower. So it's like, oh, hey, this guy is just getting in. They've got a lot of certifications. You should like him. Is that what you are also seeing?
Absolutely. So book knowledge is not street knowledge. So that's it. Book knowledge is a theory. It may or may not be relevant to where you work or what you'll be doing. It was written from one perspective. Working in the field as an intern, which is why that was a thing and has always been with architects and engineers. You have EITs, engineers in training. Architects have the term intern, which is where you actually shadow you, or at least that is the intent, that you shadow a professional who's been doing this for a while, who can, help you navigate some of the complexities of the profession, so that you can, because as architects tend to be the leaders in the room. Let
Right.
me say that. So we need to know a little bit about everybody's discipline, enough, as I would say, to make us dangerous. So, um, and being having that sense, that responsibility, and being, knowledgeable about all the players is just the first step in understanding, how the project can run smoothly. Just like in the construction side, you don't want to call in the finished guys and you haven't even finished laying the brick. Okay, being able to understand, how things need to move along, and at what stage you need to get check-ins from everyone and have coordination meetings. All of that is extremely important. The lack of coordination meetings can really cause a project to fail. People need to understand they can talk to each other and talk as a group, so that the whole system works well.
Absolutely. And I've seen from my aspect, being a managed service provider, that sometimes low voltage is a little bit of an afterthought, uh, especially if you've already got a concrete slab down and the low voltage guys are saying, we need a data line to go into this room, and it's coming not from a drop ceiling, not from a drop ceiling, but it has to actually come up from the floor just based upon how the design of that particular room, that particular location is going to be. And yeah, if you don't have that type of communication, and all of a sudden you have two choices, right? One really bad and one ugly. The really bad is you got to tear everything up, right? Nobody wants to do that. You got a thick concrete slab, you got rebar in there. You don't want to tear that up. That's a lot. But the ugly one is you have to put on like outside conduiting or wire covers, things of that nature. And maybe you can hide them, maybe you can't. They've got the under carpet runs that you can try to do, but then you've got this ugly hump in the middle of the room. Maybe you can cover it, maybe you can't. And you're right. You have to have that type of communication so that you don't run into issues like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's lack of coordination in the early stages of the project, so that that conduit could be placed either in the pour or underneath of it, so as not to have to come back and saw cut a perfectly good concrete floor. That's just something nobody really wants to do. And just by having the team come together, talk about what they need, and granted, you may think in terms that that IT person is really going to be at the end. Their real work is at the end of the deal. But if they don't have that initial piece in place where they can pull their lines and have them hidden, if nobody's thinking the job through as a whole to consider that, oh, I need this in my conference rooms. I don't want to have IT showing in my conference space. And I also would like to have this in the workspace, at the workstations, where we're not tripping over wire, and like you said, have those raised pieces to protect people from walking on the wire. And all it really takes is just some early coordination before the slab goes in.
Because not every place will have a raised floor. If you do have a raised floor, you don't have to worry about it as much. There's still some things that you do have to worry about, but
Yes.
it's not as much. But if you're talking about like a strip mall, you're not going to have a raised floor.
No,
If you're
no.
talking about a old building, you're not going to have a raised floor, and there's even more restrictions, especially if it's like a historical building.
Yes.
um, yeah, it's like
And
you're going to have a lot more restrictions on how you can do things. My house here,
absolutely.
it's pretty old, but since it's my house, I can do whatever I want to it. But there are some major challenges because I would have to go through a lot of either tearing down portions of walls, which I don't necessarily want to do, or I have to try to snake everything, which I don't know what's all in my walls. I really don't.
depending on the age of the house, um, by this point in time, so the office we're in could be considered a historic building. I don't want it designated that way because it puts restrictions on what I can do to the building.
Right.
Um, but in trying to penetrate wood that is essentially petrified, I mean, it has been in the building it's in the town it's in, which, there's a lot of humidity in Baltimore. We're in Baltimore County, but there's still a lot of
Oh
humidity
yeah.
and all that. And there's not much insulation in the walls. There's no continuous insulation at all. That's called, wood.
Yeah,
It's called wood planks. And so, that wood becomes really impossible to be able to bore into, to do anything like that. So then you end up, running surface stuff. So I get that part because we're in that type of building. It was built in 1931. So,
okay. Yeah,
so
that
I understand that part.
that's a little bit up there. That beats mine by about 30 years.
So that having the foresight and what I really like people to also consider, this is a long, building is a long-term commitment. So being able to think, well, through what's coming in the future that we might want to try and anticipate to make this building more valuable or bring value to the workers or the people who are using it, however they're using it in the future. So they have more opportunities for being able to upgrade and
Yep.
create a more modern infrastructure that may not even exist at this point, but just
Like
putting
raised
things together.
floors.
Yes,
That's the big one. Right there
yes,
is
that's huge.
having that raised floor is just it's when I was working at this one place, they moved into a new building. They built it from scratch. And one of the things that they absolutely had to have was a raised floor just because of the sheer amount of electrical, the sheer amount of data. Every one of our benches, I was basically an electrical engineer. Every one of the benches had to have multiple data lines, multiple electrical lines in the bench itself. So that's a lot of runs that you have to do, a lot of electrical. And thankfully, because we had the raised floor, it did simplify a lot of things for that ultimate construction. And moving around benches, these incredibly heavy benches that have so many pigtails coming off of it was still so easy to do because we had that capability of just, oh, this tile now needs to be over here because the bench is now over here. Boop, move it.
Yes, yes. Recently worked on a project um, with a firm that does these office renovations for the state of Maryland. And the particular building that we were renovating, having that raised floor, not only for being able to power technology, but also it was a part of their mechanical systems. So versus having to deal with ductwork that's coming through walls and ceilings and all that was also being handled in the raised floor.
Yeah, I don't think that like West Coast really appreciates some of the challenges on like the East Coast or the Midwest because you look at Baltimore, very old city. I mean, we've been in development for longer than the United States existed.
Yes,
Same thing with like New York, Philadelphia, and even Chicago, where I'm originally from, is a very old city. A lot of this Gothic type of architecture, a lot of historic buildings that you really can't do much with. And West Coast, they have a little bit of that, but you look at their skyline and everything's like brand new, at least from the
Is-
80s on up.
which is interesting. Chicago, there was a race between New York and Chicago on that's the first skyscraper, and Chicago won, actually.
Yep,
Um,
Chicago did. I forget exactly what building it was, but yeah, we had the first 11-story tall building, and then we had the tallest. And depending on who you talk to in Chicago, it still is. No, it's not the tallest. But we beat the Petronas Towers. Let me tell you, when I was in the Navy, I actually got a chance to see the Petronas Towers. When you're standing street level at the Willis Tower, they still say Sears. Just don't tell them. When you're standing at street level and you look up. There, you have to look basically straight up if you want to see the top of it. Standing right next to the Petronas Towers, and you look up, you're like, okay, that's tall. It just doesn't. It doesn't feel like it was tall.
yeah, yeah, and can you imagine, the type of planning that really needs to happen to make a building like that successful? And
Oh
not
yeah.
something that, yeah, just um, quickly becomes dated, because that's not a building that you're going to easily take down or renovate in some way. So you really need to be thinking way ahead of time for what is possible in the future in the way of technology and heating, cooling systems, some of the major systems that now drive, people's work and how people work.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing issues with like the heating and cooling systems in data centers. Whether that not they're using local water, or I mean there's issues that they're trying to solve. And I could not imagine being a project manager in that type of situation, because the sheer scope, like, it's not tall. Data centers are not tall. They're just not. But the amount of power that they draw, the amount of cooling that they need to displace, I mean that all that heat energy has to go somewhere.
Yes,
uh,
absolutely.
Especially with AI the way that it is uh, currently. It's like, yeah, there's so much that has to go into these things. I the scope of it, and the fact that they build these things in like no time whatsoever.
Right. Well, they use a lot of tilt-up materials, so they're like literally either built on flat ground and then tilted up, or built in a factory somewhere, and they haul them to the site and erect them in that way. So all the curing and stuff doesn't have to happen, in on the property, out in the weather, which is uncontrolled. It can happen in a controlled environment.
So many years ago, we had a mall out here, Owings Mills Mall,
Mhm.
and they tore that down in order to make more of like a strip center. Reduce the amount of stores, but also have a lot of open space and gentrify a lot of that area. I thought the smartest thing that they did is the first thing they built in that area was a Lowe's. They built a Lowe's. Okay. So while you're building out the rest of the strip area, if you run out of tools, if you break a bit, if you need a new hammer, where are you going to go? Do you have to go all the way to the Home Depot that's 3 miles away? No. You go right to Lowe's.
It's really good thinking.
I just, I when I saw that, I'm just like, why would they? Oh, that's why you did it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I think about when we've done renovations to our building, the nearest Home Depot is 3 miles away. And yes, there was a lot of running to the Home Depot because they'd open up something and say, "Oh, we didn't know this was here,"
Yeah.
or yeah. So yeah, I
Yeah. I
get
mean,
it
the
absolutely.
logistics of that can just go, you know, completely out of hand. It's like, okay, we need screws of this length of this, pitch. And then they open up the box and like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work for us.
Yeah.
What are you
And
going to do?
again, this is project management
Yeah.
because somebody should have been checking the deliveries to make sure that what came that day for work anticipated the next day was the right stuff. You know, someone
Now,
should have checked.
now,
Mhm.
what do you see about like automation kind of filling in some of those gaps so that problems like that don't necessarily come into play?
Interesting question. I was mentoring and working with a young man who was basically studying this and did his doctorate in how automation could be used to improve the outcomes in the construction world. And one of the things he was studying is how do we get needed materials and items from point A to point B, and what is the most efficient way to do that, and who's checking, who's doing um, the quality control checks on the items just being shipped to make sure the right thing is in that box when
Right.
it gets to the job site. And how does that work, and how's that supply chain, and this was during COVID, so things were already a little chaotic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Supply
and
chains were practically decimated and are
and
still recovering. We're
yes,
still recovering.
actually, yes, yes, they are. And at the particular time that COVID was really deep into, its path, we were doing roof replacements for Baltimore City schools, and you could not get roofing material. It
Mm.
just didn't exist. And so being able to schedule the tear off with the putback and knowing the product was going to be there was that job was just really I would not I do not envy those people who were trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because
The
yeah,
whole
I mean it was just hard.
the whole lean mentality, while is on paper great, if you have even the slightest disruption in your supply lines, I mean, for how many years did we have cars in manufacturer lots that could not be sold because they didn't have the chips to put into these cars to actually run them?
Yeah. So they're just
It
sitting
made a
there on
lot
the
of car
lot.
guys pine for the days of like, can we just bring carburetors back? Like, no, 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 no. Let's not go. Let's not go there. Let's not bring carburetors
Jump
back.
off that bridge.
Yeah. The Let me tell you, I get the mentality of that. It's like, well, it just works. Mechanical linkages, I get that. I absolutely get that. But I don't want to go out there and tune my car every week, month, year, whatever. Have a little timing light, turning distributor caps. Like, okay, can I get another extra mile per gallon if I turn it just this way? Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm glad that the computer tunes my car as I go.
As a car person, I get it. And but I also get the simpler part where, I I had a small when my husband and I got our first house, I had a small called a Arrow, if you know what that is, Plymouth Arrow,
Okay.
and tornado went up. Okay, we went to the, supply store, picked up an alternator, got a book from the library that told us how to put it in, and just pulled one out, put the other one in, and kept it moving. So
Well, yeah,
I understand that nostalgia for wanting to be able to do that kind of stuff. But
yeah. They had the books for pretty much every single car, and I don't honestly I don't know if they come out with them anymore. I pretty much doubt that they do because the manufacturers love to
YouTube,
hold.
It's
YouTube,
YouTube.
yes, YouTube is a great resource for that, and for my own car, I've had to rely on YouTube for certain things, you know, because like my door locks, they're all electronic. There's one keyhole for the driver's side, and you have to pry off a cover to actually get at it. But everything else is electronic. The trunk, forget about it. So if I have like a small little battery booster pack, if my battery should die, and this has actually happened to me, I had a little booster pack, had it in the trunk, could not get at it. So what I had to do, I'm going on to YouTube going, how do I open up this stupid thing? I had to get into my car in the first place, get into the back. Now, luckily, I was home. My car is in the garage, so the doors were unlocked. But if all the doors were locked, I would have to crawl over the seat to get into the back seat, open up a hidden flap, turn or a latching mechanism, because I couldn't pull down the seats because those were in the back of the trunk, which is actually a good safety feature. It's like, what?
From you.
And I didn't have a manual when I bought the car. Like I didn't even have an owner's manual. I bought it used. The owner's manual is long since gone. Like, so yeah, you have to go to YouTube. You have to go to some resource, and you can't go to the library anymore for that.
Exist on the shelves anymore. Nobody's putting in that. I wonder the future of libraries, because less and less is coming out in paper, you know?
Libraries, I've noticed, have actually pivoted a little bit. They don't just offer books anymore. They do, and there's apps out there that will allow you to audiobooks, ebooks if they have them. There are some that obviously they have to keep in paper because the author has decided a long time ago it's like, no, this is never going on to digital, whatever. But some libraries, they're offering 3D printing. They're offering computers for. I, I saw kids playing Minecraft in the library. Which, in fairness, when I went to the library many years ago, we did play on an Apple IIe of like Carmen Sandiego or Oregon Trail, of course. So, okay, maybe that's not. But I will tell you that the Baltimore County Library, I've actually been using them as a resource for my business. They've had entrepreneur classes. They have,
That's where they're using space now.
yeah,
Libraries are space. They're
they're
public
space,
space.
community
Yeah.
spaces, and they don't just say, okay, like the knowledge is great. You need to have that knowledge. An educated society is a good society, but they cater to the entire community, and the fact that they have resources that help, in my case, small business just trying to start up, they have some really great resources that I'm definitely going to be using.
Um, um, just the kind of focus that we've had in our firm, actually, even before I started the firm, historic preservation. So that's the other things. They are the keepers of the history.
Yes.
And yeah, and being able to go to a library and find documentation, or sometimes on microfiche. I don't
Oh
know if you know
boy.
what that is. Um, that can help with, okay, I understand now why they built this building the way it is, and we're trying to modify it or bring it to a 21st century use. And here's what we want to keep, and here's what not so much. But we at least understand why they did it. And is this something that could be brought back to functionality in the upgrade of, in the, if you want to call it upgrade, but also mostly in the repair of the building, because the building's been sitting and not, been used for like, I don't know, 50 years or something. And so, having that resource is huge, and especially if you're trying to do historic structures reports. being able to find out information about who the architect and the contractor was, and why the plans, and why the building was designed the way it was designed. That's huge, because coming away with that knowledge informs how you're going to design the building in the renovation piece and in the restoration part and within the preserving of the story that the school and the building tell.
Now, when you're looking at restoration, I've seen this in a couple of spaces on YouTube where there are people who are very survivor biased. And what I mean by that is they swear all up and down that only old materials are good, that older materials, older ways of doing things are good. And they'll point to 100-year-old building and say, look, and look at how dense the grain pattern is on this wood versus this other piece of wood that I got from Home Depot, which, by the way, is most likely a completely different style of wood, whether it's like oak versus pine. Well, of course they're going to be different grain pattern. That's different
Yes.
wood.
Yes. Well, not only that, um, old growth trees versus, new growth trees, just in the time that they've had to grow, um, you know, which is really short. They're not going to have developed the density and all of that old growth has, and I understand that part. Um, but at the same token, depending on how they're grown, how they take, all of that comes into play. I can't tell you that for sure only old materials are the best and the only thing to use. It also depends on where you're putting them and how they're being used.
Yeah,
Where in the building, what is their role in the building? All of that matters.
like you may have a softer wood be more of like a beautification piece, but not a structural piece.
Exactly, exactly. Or maybe you're not even using wood if it's
Right,
something you can't see. That maybe it's more, a material that is steel or something like that. It's not going to be seen anyway.
right.
So yeah, so and nobody's going to strip back the historic material that is the face material that is for the experience of the building to see that you got a steel stud in there.
And I don't think there's anybody who's serious that will say, "Oh, you need to have an iron beam versus a steel beam." I think that has been universally kind of like, yeah, no, iron is good for what it was, but if we're going to be doing a serious structure, you got to use steel.
Yeah. Sections. We did a building in Hampton Hall, and it was a historic building because it was unique in what its original use was. It was a meeting place for Confederate soldiers.
Ooh.
Back in 1889, Um, and so we worked with the owner who converted it into some very nice apartments, and used a lot of the original materials, actually opening up and exposing a lot of materials that would have otherwise in its past not have been thought of as being beautiful. And the craftsmanship back then, I always tell people before football, there was a lot of craftsmanship going on. and 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 places and all that really come unexpected because they're utility spaces and we today would not do that. It would cost too much. Um, so
Well, now that kind of the whole minimalist aesthetic. The one thing I will say is that it does look clean,
yes.
almost to the point of sterility, but um, do you see that possibly technology could bring back some of the artistic, bring back some of the actual design to the point where it's not purely minimalist, that there can still be some warmth and heart to a design based upon using like these CNC milling machines, these laser cutters that are able to put out very complex designs with minimal material loss.
Yes. Well, the problem is the owner. Well, we don't have owners, or we don't have projects. And so if we can convince the owner that it's worth spending that extra money to do something creative, something that is maybe at times just purely aesthetic,
Right.
or that enhances the structural with an aesthetic by creating a nicer looking beam, a nicer looking connection between, you know, columns and beams that like they did back in the day, and that would be worth leaving exposed and not having just this ugly minimalist pictures that all you see is, bolts and wells.
Yeah, because I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I like the idea of like an open ceiling, where instead of having that drop ceiling that hides all your wires and piping and all that, they
Yeah.
have it actually opened up and you can see all that. And to a certain extent, I can understand, it gives kind of like I don't even know. I like, I don't hate it, but when I see it, I'm just kind of like, that's a choice.
So what that means, how was the building constructed? Was in most cases, buildings from, the past were not constructed with the thought that this is going to be opened up and for, public consumption. So it's going to be hidden. But even with that said, I go back to, remember what I said before, football. Even though they knew it was going to be hidden, they did really nice work. I look at some of the ways that concrete floors were poured. I'm sorry, where the concrete, um, how can I say, structural system, horizontal structural system is integral to the floor. And in doing this, they use forms. These have steel in them, which gives them, their rigidity and so forth, and their strength. But they actually are nice looking, and the concrete that they were using and all that. It's not something where you see, kind of ugly aggregate. It's really a really nice, piece. And in those cases, I say, yeah, I don't see a problem with opening. Now, I don't want to see a whole lot of wires running all through everywhere. Okay, so that part I would have a problem with. It has to be thought through. You have to,
Right.
in some way, understand how you can move things to the peripheral and still keep, or make it integral to the design, and still have everything function the way you do. So, um, yeah, if you're thinking on those terms, yes,
Yeah. Before we started the recording, we were talking a little bit about these mini PCs where they're kind of like hiding away. And you were talking about just now about the cables. You don't want to necessarily see them. And if I'm dealing with a customer, one of the things that we want to try to do is we want to make all the cablings kind of like disappear, even at the rack where all the equipment goes, your routers, your switches, and all that. We're not going to come in and say, okay, here's everything, and we're just going to plug everything in and go away. No, we'll actually cable manage. We will absolutely cable manage, and it's not just for the beautification. There actually is a reason for it, in that if you have just a rat's nest of cable and something goes down, you're going to have to like hand over hand and untangle everything and just like eventually take the whole thing down. And you don't want to do that. You would rather have that cable nice and bundled, And so it's like, okay, so this run right here, it's bad. I can go ahead and replace that, take it out of its bracket, pop a new one in, take the 5-10 minutes to cable it all back up nice, and everything just works smoothly again. So there's a reason to make these things look good as well as
Yes.
just be good.
Yes, well, of course, I'm on the side of it. I want it to look good as well as so I'm totally for it. So you can imagine in this old building that there weren't a lot of opportunities for plugging stuff in.
Yeah.
And cabling for communication was not even a thought.
Well,
So
there's also another problem with that in like the wireless technology, because there are some where either the walls are such a thick brick, you'll have lead and steel piping, from yeah, like the lead paint for the most part doesn't affect wireless too much, but there is, when I say is like it'll reduce the signal a little bit. So if you have a small space, that's not a concern. But there may be a point where it's like you need to put in a lot more access points, and you need to know kind of the history of that space. So if you're dealing with a really old building, yeah, I'm sorry, you might have to buy another couple extra couple $100 access points.
you're in Baltimore. You are, in many cases, especially in the city, dealing with a very old building. So it just comes with the territory. And short of, um, yeah, having wiring all over the place, you really want to try as much as possible to use access points, as that does limit, the direct wiring that you'd have to have if you don't have it. And so but making all that work, I have to say, I've been in some less older buildings that people didn't think through the idea of having wireless communication. And so therefore, the building wasn't constructed in a way that supports that. And it's a more modern building.
Yeah,
And so
and I think
it's,
you still see that in residential as well.
yes,
Because
yes.
again, for whatever reason, YouTube has been really feeding me inspections of residential places, which is a horror story in of itself in many cases. But they'll put in the AC lines, they'll put in the duct work, they'll put in the electrical, sometimes right. But you very rarely see the low voltage, the data lines. I saw this is really funny. Just this morning, I saw an inspection video on a new construction that had a phone jack in a room. Like an honest RJ11 phone jack. Who does that? Like,
Yeah, this was built 25 years ago. And almost 26. And yes, we still have phone jacks. Ask me if anybody answers those phones. Ask me if anybody even uses those jacks. Oh, no.
so my house is so old that it doesn't even have the RJ11, the phone cable. It has the four prongs. Um, I have a phone. It is not connected to anything, although I actually could have it hooked up to a voice over IP system. It's a rotary phone on the wall sitting over there.
When we first moved here, there was one of those left upstairs, and I think what was the master bedroom. And not only that, I saw something else, and some of them still exist here. A friend of mine who's an electrician, he passed away not long ago, but he wired this place for us. It's a combination of not into which, thank God, has all been disconnected and only exists in some really like weird places like the doorbell. And
Even
oh,
the
and the front
doorbell.
outside lights.
Yeah,
Huh?
even the doorbell, the little transformer that sits on the side of your electrical panel is going away because everybody is going to like Ring cameras or some type of security system, which is great for
Yes.
me.
It's funny when you're in a place and you see this old and old, like where you see the generational changes as time went on and where we are now. And you know, I'm looking at even when we first moved here in 2012, we were still running landlines for desk phones. And so I'm looking at all this stuff, this wiring. I'm like, why is that still there? You know, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's right. We used to have wired. The our desk phones that we still have, they're like radio. So the nice thing about it is I can be talking to you in the building. I can walk outside and go, you know, around somewhere because we have like two sheds and things in the back. I can all on the same desk phone. So
Or
um,
using soft phones where like your desk phone is actually on an app. That's something that we do, and yeah, like I technically have a desk phone number, but I don't have a desk phone. It's all on this thing.
it's just really funny. It really is. It's just and being in an old building where you can see the technology that went from this thing to that thing to the other thing is it's just really all of that in one building. It's a really history lesson. To be honest, it's really a history lesson of how we've evolved in a short period. I mean, I don't really see this as long term. If you look at the way things progressed, say from 1900 to say 1945, and then the jump that went from after World War II into, you know, because this is kind of how we kind of look at things, which is kind of sad when you think about it. We look at wars to kind of mark periods in time. And then the jump to the Vietnam War, and then to jump to where we are now, it's like, you know, I remember sitting in front of a small little box TV watching, you know, the astronauts take off and go to the moon. And that was a big deal that we had a TV that they could roll into the classroom and
Yeah.
watch this stuff, you know. And now it's like everybody has one right there on their hand and they can see it all.
Yeah, I grew up. We had color when I grew up, but it was a small 19-inch TV, and the remote control. This guy, you're like clunk 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 clunk. So, um,
Appreciation though for what we are doing, what we're capable of doing, and how the industry has changed.
yeah,
And yeah, and in many ways, our really incorporating things like green buildings and all that have really been first off adopted by all the major agencies and by the clients now. They see the benefit in it, which is absolutely wonderful. Reusing, materials and all that. There's really it, that growth spurt, which a lot of folk came screaming into, drag them in. Once they got there, they understood it. They got it. And I think that's huge. It helps us with our work not being looked at as the bad guy who wants to spend all this extra money in the upfront. But when you can convince them of what the back costs are and how much lower they are, that is a real good selling point for that.
yeah, because I think we all remember when LED light, just like standard LED light bulbs were first rolling out. They were $20 a pop, and it's like, why would you spend that much money when I can buy the old style light bulb for $1? Well, first, those LEDs will last you 20, 30 years. I I have LED light bulbs that I bought when I first moved into this house. I moved in here in 2012. They're still burning just as bright as when I pulled them out of the package. And I've had one of those fail of all the other ones that I've bought. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. But an incandescent, a year. That's all you get.
If it's not getting a lot of use.
Yeah. I just, and now LED light bulbs have come way down in price. Still not at the dollar that the old incandescents were, but they do last a whole lot longer. And even if it lasts, you know, 10 years at $5 a piece, that's 50 cents per year versus a dollar per year.
Yes,
And as inflation
absolutely.
keeps going, if you can spread
Yes.
that cost out, it only makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And I think the lighting is better. It's cooler for one thing. Incandescent bulbs heat up. They produce more
Yep.
heat in the room.
Oh, I thought you meant like
Uh,
the lighting is cooler, which is also sometimes true.
yeah. Yeah.
But some of
Depends on
them are
what
even
which ones.
customizable. Like you can change the temperature of that lighting. So
Yes.
if you're designing the interior of a room and you want to have just like that warm, nurturing feeling of a room, you can make that just with the lighting. You don't necessarily
Yes.
have to paint that room. You can just do it with the lighting.
Yes, you can. And it's huge. But then if you on the opposite side of that, you can change the bulb if you need it to be really bright learning space, just change the bulb. It goes from point A to point B in like seconds, you know, which is huge.
And then
You
you
know,
can call somebody like me who will use a bunch of smart bulbs and some automation, and you the sky's the limit on that one. You know, whether you
absolutely.
want to do presence sensors so that the lights only go on and off when there's people present there,
Mm-hmm.
um, certain times of the day, which is great for offices. You know, when everybody's out of the office, why you don't want to leave the lights on?
Exactly.
That's
And
money
you can,
being burnt.
yeah, you can program them all to go off. Yep.
Absolutely. I absolutely love the automation. I don't have a lot of smart bulbs here, but the ones that I do, it's great where I can set up routines. Even when I'm away, I can make it look like there's somebody here,
Be
which is
there.
great for security.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And to me, that's one of the big plus in having that ability to automate the lighting when it comes and goes, as well as the cost savings and all of that. But that's huge, especially if you have kids who leave lights on.
In my case, it's the
Yeah,
wife who leaves the lights on, but we won't. I can't really yell at her. You know that would be that's not the greatest thing. You know, but yeah,
you remember telling my son, "You left the light on in your room." And he's downstairs now in the kitchen getting something to eat. And he said, "But I'm coming right back." And he says, "You can turn it off and then turn it back on when you get back." Well, now you have emotion in there. It'll notice that he's not in the room anymore and it'll turn itself off. And just in case he starts watching TV downstairs and forgets to go back. Okay. So there's that. Yes, absolutely. So yeah.
there's definitely
So
been times where I would use some of the my capabilities. Being able to turn an alarm on and off. Like you leave the house and you're like, oh no, did I turn an alarm on, or did I lock a door, or did I do this? Do I do it? You can just be like, oh, okay, boom, it's done.
even have to be in the same town. You don't really even have to be on the same hemisphere. You can check all those things. You can bring your cameras up and see what's going on at the place, and all that. Especially important to us was when we had house sitters, keeping our dogs. We could see what was going on in the house, how the dogs were behaving, and how the house sitters were behaving as well. So yeah, that part right there, really, yeah, technology in that part, it really is good.
I will say because there was a commercial during the big game. We don't use its name, even though legally I can. It's just it's better not to. But during the big game, there was that big ring commercial that a lot of people were very uncomfortable with. You know which one I'm talking about?
No, I didn't actually watch the game.
That okay, that's fine. So what it is it is an AI system that is always looking at your cameras, your door cameras, possibly other cameras, but they said specifically door cameras to help locate dogs, dogs that run away. And it's one of those things where it's like, it seems initially like an interesting idea because it can help families reunite, especially if you're talking about not just dogs, but like children
Yeah.
or crime issues that come up. Like so many houses have cameras on them now.
Yes.
And I had a situation where one of my neighbors was broken into, and the cops saw that there were cameras on my house, came over. My NVR wasn't working at the time, so I didn't actually
Mhm.
have any footage. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to help them out. But they're like, okay, well, this is something that's always on, and whenever we need it, we can access it at any time. Like, no, I don't want you. Like it would be nice where like if a situation came up like that, like a dog missing, child missing, that we were willing to offer that footage up.
Yeah, somebody's being broken into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it would be nice to have the choice to
Yes.
do that. So like everybody having cameras, great, but having them always recording, always reporting, always no, no,
No,
no,
no,
no,
no.
no.
I need my privacy.
Exactly.
I need my privacy when I want I do the privacy. As my children would say, I live out in the middle of nowhere for a reason. So yeah, and that's I see the positives in it, and one could say that if it saves one child's life, then it's worth giving up. And probably if I take it to that extreme, I would agree with you. But at the same token, people have different motivations for why they're spying, and I'm not comfortable with Big Brother, uh, yeah, spying all the time, 24/7. No,
I,
I have
I,
a problem
I
with
I
that.
agree. I agree, Google. Stop spying on me.
It is listening. I know it's listening because I know if I have like fallen asleep and like it's like my phone knows I'm asleep and it sleeps. When I wake up and hardly have said anything, like, you fall asleep on the sofa and really haven't done or had a conversation of the sort, and the phone wakes up just from the sound of my voice. It's
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah, no, that's not cool.
Not at all. So I understand why people turn their phones off at night.
Mine, unfortunately, is my alarm clock, so I gotta leave it on. But I do use the bedtime mode, which does say during these periods of time to leave me alone.
I
um,
got you. And I had one time and then I stopped. I mean, when your kids move out of the house or if you have elderly family members, and it really hit home when I did. My mom, one of my mom's cousins, uh, his children weren't nearby and not even in the same state. He took ill all of a sudden, and this is he only had my house phone number.
okay,
And he calls me at 4 in the morning, and I'm really mad because I'm thinking this is somebody soliciting something.
right.
But I answered the phone, and it was him, and he was sick, and he was calling me to let me know he's being taken to the hospital in an ambulance, and can I call his son? And because his son was, I think at that time in Chicago, and let people know. But he knew I was here, and I wasn't that far away from him, and so, in that case, then you're like, dang, I really do need to keep that phone plugged in because there might be some other elderly person in my family. And this is the only number they have for me since I've had that number for probably 40 some years.
Right.
It's moved with me every time I move. And so, you know, some old school people still not good with the cell phone. And,
Yeah, for my dad, I only keep a house phone because he knows that number. He
it's
just knows that number.
memorized. It's
So,
memorized. They
yeah.
they don't have to think about it. And that's just the way it was when I was growing up. You knew by heart all your phones. I even knew my customers' phone numbers.
I still remember my old home number. I'm never going to call it, but I remember it.
We closed when my mom decided to finally get a cell phone. We got rid of her landline because she could take. I wanted her to be able to take that phone wherever she went in the house.
Yeah.
So if she fell or something happened, she had the phone right there. Versus that plug in the wall in the kitchen. you know, and it's screwed to the wall.
Yeah.
So yeah, so so I do understand that that's the thing that a lot of older people are comfortable with because that's the number they remember, and I get that. And cell phones change so often. People change their numbers for various reasons. They get a lot of spam or whatever, or they add a number. Like I have a two-number phone, and it allows me to have two independent numbers on it. So yes, it becomes for older people trying to keep up, it becomes a problem. So out of that, I respect my elders and I keep the phone plugged. So yeah, because I know one day I'm going to be there. And I don't know what the thing is that's going to be annoying to me that I'm not ready to adopt, but I'm sure there'll be something.
I think because I grew up with the technology that I'll probably be okay. Um, but then again, I don't know. I might get to the point where there have been times in my life where I've not wanted a cell phone.
Understand that. Absolutely. And where you want to just shut it off and put it in another room. I got you.
Oh no, no, no. I don't want to shut it off and put it in another room. I want to shut it off and drop it into the river.
To
So we have gotten a little bit off topic from our original, which is fine. I think this has been a very amazing conversation that you and I have had. And for an inaugural episode, I think that this has been really fun to do. Um, but yeah, it's so as far as like doing business in Baltimore, um, because I think we talked a little bit about there's some similarities and some differences. Um, just how do you feel like doing business in Baltimore is rewarding for you?
grew up here, and I grew up in the city. And when the city was truly a city of neighborhoods, and where people looked out for their neighbors and all that, and you knew everybody in the neighborhood. Everybody, the kids all played together, and parents all knew each other, and parents could correct the neighbor's child when they were doing something they had no business doing. Um, where we are now, I think in some regards, folk miss that in a way because things have become, people have become very distant from each other and it's kind of lonely. But now I think for good or bad, all the chaos that's going on now has made people pay attention to who their neighbors are
Yeah,
and kind of begin to look out for their neighbors again. And I think in that regard, Baltimore is a, how can I put it? It's probably the best case for where that can be successful, just by nature of our neighborhoods and the way the buildings were built, row homes and things like that, um, which, puts us close together. I mean, both row homes are not common to everywhere. I mean, it's always been here in Baltimore and always been in Philadelphia. There have been places where, they've always been, but uh, because of the connection of that party wall, you're next to a person who's, right next to you. It makes sense to know that person, or at least be able to speak. So um, that characteristic of Baltimore, on top of its history, and its importance, not only to the United States, because they may not have been in the United States if it weren't for Baltimore, War 1812, some other
Yep.
things. Yeah. And its importance in the world, on the world stage. Baltimore produced steel like nobody's business. Baltimore had a shipping yard, because of the bay, would allow deep water boats to be able to bring, materials and so forth into Baltimore Harbor that are sent throughout the whole country.
Yeah,
So,
and I don't think a lot of people really realized about that until the Key Bridge came down.
yes,
That is like, okay, well, Baltimore, it's just it maybe it's Charm City that they got crabs,
place,
I think, but yeah, once that bridge coming down, absolute tragedy. And hopefully we get a better one up, soon.
soon.
I know that there's still work and still some questions surrounding about whether funding is going to happen and all that, but they are going to make a bigger bridge, a taller bridge, which is only going to help Baltimore bring in even more supplies because you need bigger ships in. And
Yes.
I think that that's absolutely amazing. And they're also talking about replacing another bridge, possibly having three whole new bridges to make it easier to get out onto the peninsula.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is great. So, yeah, I think Baltimore gets a bad rap, and that mostly is coming from folk who don't know. We have not always done a good job of telling our story. In
And
fact, we've done a
that's
poor
one of the
job.
things that I'm trying to fix with this channel because, as I said, I'm a transplant, and when I first came to Baltimore, I had no clue. I knew existed. I didn't even know really the sports teams all that much. I knew almost nothing. I knew of Maryland crab cakes. That's it. And I think that outside of Maryland, that is what people mostly know. Working with my franchise, they're out of Texas, and when they're trying to for things within Maryland, they can't find anything. They have to look in the Baltimore DC area because that's how everything is advertised. Like Maryland, who cares?
We still missed the boat on that one too. Um, you know, Maryland is such a diverse state. We have waterfalls. I don't know if you knew that. We have lakes.
So
Uh, we have a little bit of everything, big city to like rural countryside.
yes, and typically within like half a mile of each other. What I like to
Yes.
do, and again, this is from like a transplant outsider coming in and living here for the past 16 years. I call it America condensed. The only
Yes.
thing we don't have is deserts. We have mountains, we have lakes, we have rivers, we have oceans, we have bays, we have every conceivable type of environment in this tiny state compared to some of
Yes.
the other ones. And yeah, it's America condensed.
Yeah. Absolutely. It really is. And folk don't get it, who don't live here and don't, I mean, you know, because first off, they listen to the negative propaganda, and yeah, and again, our story has not always been told well. Um,
Neither has America's.
Yeah.
Neither has America's. But you know
Yeah.
what? That's one of the strengths is that we can see what was bad, learn from it, and promise that it'll never happen again,
Yeah.
or at
Yeah.
least try to. I was once asked, again, transplant, why are you asking me? But I was once asked if Maryland was a northern state or a southern state. And my answer, it's both. It is geographically a southern state because we are below the Mason Dixon line, but historically it is a northern state because Maryland did not secede from the Union.
You got- I guess you call it nickname is it's a free state. It's a free state on depending on what you're looking for. I need to find freedom. And
The Freedom State,
while
asterisk terms and conditions may apply.
yes, there's that. So I mean the thesis that Maryland was founded on comes from England and the Catholics who settled in in Maryland, and they came for religious freedoms because in England the Catholics were being persecuted, and therefore its name after Queen Mary, Maryland, and um, it's actually the only state in which it was founded as a fief, if you know what that is. A fief means you go out there and you discover this new land, but you're discovering it for the monarchy, and they own it, but they let you farm it and make money off of it, and you take a piece of whatever you make and you send it back to England. Maryland is the only state in the Union that was founded that way. A lot of people don't know that.
So we
um,
started the tax. Oh.
so it has a very interesting and very unique history. It's also one of the oldest states
Yep.
in the Union, um, and one of the most, how can I put it, early organized states in the Union. Maryland gave up its property to form what is now the capital of the United States, DC. Virginia gave up a piece, but to appease those folk, they had to give it back. And
Right.
so, yeah, and
Because it was
and
going to be New York for a while. It was going to be Philadelphia and a lot of different compromises. And some of us saw Hamilton. And
well, the theory behind it was that Washington was looking for the most westerly port and the most centered location on the most. So you got to remember, he's not thinking about California and Wyoming and anything west. He's looking at just this string of colonies that's running up and down the East Coast and trying to find a place that's in the middle. And also that it's not already been land grabbed.
right.
Well, the word got out and so that went away. But uh, that was the theory behind it, its location and you know how DC was supposed to be this star on the map, and why it's not a star anymore. Also, um, but yes, that was the whole theory behind it. It's just and Maryland, being what Maryland was and is, um, was linked to DC, which was a free, also, you know, what do we call it, district, and Maryland wrapping around and property that was given by Maryland. It only makes sense that they would not have seceded from the Union. That would have been problematic.
Yeah. Having to fight on all sides of DC, that makes
Problematic.
things a little, yeah, a little
Yeah,
difficult.
It would have been. That's not to say that they weren't slaves here, because they were.
True.
Um, there are at least documented that I'm aware of 6 major plantations in the state of Maryland, primarily, believe it or not, around Baltimore. They kind of circle around Baltimore. So yeah, there was that, and quite a few, even more so on the Eastern Shore.
Right.
So, which is kind of where some of our most important abolitionists come from: Harriet Tubman, um, Frederick Douglass. So um, Baltimore's history is really just not told well. Its story is just not told well.
So when you're restoring an old building, an old Confederate building, how does that make you feel?
So I had mixed feelings, but let me tell you this. Um, the entire team, except for the owner, were from minority communities. Uh, well, there was, well, we had two. We had a structural contractor and a structural designer. The designer was an African American. The contractor was Hispanic, who did all the testing of the steel that was in that building, making sure it could carry the new loads that we're going to now be imposing on it by creating these 2-story apartment spaces and all. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer is Korean. So I think we thoroughly, thoroughly.
I mean, Michelle Obama said it herself. She was living in a house built by slaves, and saw that as prideful, not because it was built by slaves, but because, as terrible as that history was, there's ways to overcome that, to not forget it, but to heal from it.
Case, I would also say um, they built that house for who they built it for initially, not thinking that they would ever see an African American family living there. So at the end of the day, you can always look at it as though they finally built it for the people who should have been living there.
That is definitely
It took
a,
them a long time to get there.
yep, long.
So
I still think that, as terrible as our history was, the fact that, we're able to, and unfortunately we haven't fully been able to move on, and some of that is what we're seeing, kind of the pushback today.
yeah,
But I do think that time marches towards justice,
yes. Sometimes it's a real slow march.
which
You
is
got to
also
get through the
problematic.
mud.
Again, I was from Illinois, not too far from where the Trail of Tears went through.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
All
sometimes like
right.
a
So on that happy note, um, I do want to thank you so much for being part of this channel, for being the inaugural member of this family that I'm trying to build, this family of business leaders, and just kind of showing that, hey, rest of the world, Maryland's here. Pay attention to us.
absolutely. We have, I would say, um, in a square foot radius, looking at, say, let's take 50-mile radius. We have more institutions of higher learning that can pretty much teach you anything you want to know
Yes.
within a 50-foot radius. And this is one of the things, so the Women in Architecture program came to the DC um, the DMV, and back in 2015. And it came here because we were looking at where can we draw the most amount of students. There are three schools, four schools, including, I think DC still has theirs, UDC, four schools of architecture. That doesn't exist anywhere else in the United States within a 50-mile radius. Within that, there are also three schools of engineering. So that doesn't exist within a 50-mile radius. I mean, again, we are just not fully understood, and we don't do a good job of telling our story.
Well, thank you for telling me yours.
It was a pleasure talking with you.
And if you out there watching this video, you like everything that you saw here, absolutely like and subscribe, share this video out. It's really the best way to grow this channel as I continue telling the stories of Maryland, of Baltimore, and its business leaders. So, Kathleen, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you for all that you're doing because you are helping to get the story out there.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Bye.